It's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here indeed, in for Gary and Eric. They return in a week. A couple of headlines for you real quickly. By the way, you can find out more about me on the Dan Mandis Show Facebook page. You can follow me on the socials at Dan Mandis Show. I do host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. And you can find out more about that show and listen if you'd like online. 997WTN.com, among many other platforms. And so a couple of debate topics for you real quickly. This is one of the headlines from the New York Post. No debate as to who's in charge. Jill Biden, they say, is clearly in charge. Miranda Devine writing, Jill Biden's delusional if she believes that she can save her husband, the country, after debate debacle. Well, it really clearly, obviously was a debate debacle. And anybody who saw the debate knows that. And here we are with another day, the Monday following that Thursday debate. And it's like every website I go to, every place I go, every corner, every nook and cranny that I go to on the internet, there is yet another story about the debate. And there's a reason why. And it's because, theoretically, this is supposed to be the leader of the free world. And so there's a lot of people out there today, and they are really publicly proclaiming Jill Biden as public enemy number one, and for good reason.
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts. And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do? Why?
Joe Biden, of course, waiting for his juice box. And Gary and Eric played that audio for you on Friday morning, the Friday after that Thursday evening debate. And I even debated on my own show in Nashville. Is that real? Is this real? Because it sounds so utterly ridiculous. And if you haven't seen that video, the video to that audio, I mean, Joe Biden, he looks, I don't even know how to describe it. He looks like a second grader waiting for his juice box. And for Joe Biden to say that he answered all of the questions, he really didn't. And so now there's a couple of things going on this morning, and I'm sure your local morning show is going to have all kinds of discussion about this. Number one is that a White House photographer is now coming out and saying what we've all known for a long time, blowing the whistle on Biden's cognitive health as he reveals aides knew for months that he was not fit for office. Now, one of the things, and I did say this earlier in the broadcast, and that was that there's all these bombshells coming out now about Biden's cognitive abilities. And I keep saying the same thing, which is, well, you know, the media can call this a bombshell, but the reality is that Americans have known that Joe Biden was having problems for a long time. But they do say after Biden's horrendous debate performance, current and former aides are saying the quiet part out loud and revealing what the president is like behind the scenes. Former White House Deputy Director of Photography Chandler West wrote in an Instagram story, "It is time for Joe Biden to go." And he goes on to talk about the various White House aides, people who work in the White House, people that work in the West Wing as well. And he says that, yeah, they will say that he has a cold or just experienced a bad night. But for weeks and months in private, they have all said what we saw last night. Joe is not as strong as he was just a couple of years ago. But for those of us who have dealt with people who have Alzheimer's, you know that a couple of years is a lifetime and that they can lose a lot of cognitive ability in a couple of years. Biden's campaign trying to brush off the issue and claim the car crash performance was merely a slow start. However, here's what he says. Speculation is swirling that those closest to the president, mainly First Lady Jill Biden, were shielding the president really since he took office, especially after his limitations were on full display at the debate on Thursday night. See, here's what's going on. And this is what happens, is that we saw what we saw on Thursday night, and now the floodgates are going to start. It's almost like now you've got all of these people that are going to start coming out who knew, and they knew for a long time, behind the scenes just how bad Joe Biden was. But, you know, conservatives, I mean, Gary and Eric have known for a long time. I've known for a long time. A lot of you folks have known for a long time how far gone Joe Biden was. Reporters have complained for years, the story goes. Reporters have complained for years about access to the president and claims the wranglers within the Biden administration are working to keep him with as little off-script time as possible with the mainstream media. Well, yeah, you know that they don't like him to answer questions, and when they do, the questions are predetermined with predetermined reporters. A former White House residence official telling Axios that Jill Biden was so protective of the president and the First Lady's top aide, Anthony Bernal, just protects her. And they often wouldn't let us do anything for them. The separation, they say, between the family and the residence staff was so big, so divided, the former White House official added. It's not supposed to be that way, and usually isn't, even in the Trump administration and the Trump White House. But right now, they do have the president just simply walled off so that nobody can really see how he is in real life, as you would say, because they know how bad he is. For example, they say during a very hot Independence Day celebration on the South Lawn back on July 4th of 2021, Biden went back into the White House where the door was abruptly shut behind him. So butlers and other resident staff were blocked from aiding the president. Aides suggesting Biden was overheated, but it did raise suspicion among staff and a consensus that they were purposely creating a barrier around health-related issues. So you're going to see a lot of that in the days ahead. You know, America has gone from really shock at what we saw on Thursday night to that conversation on Friday morning. And now we had the whole weekend where, you know, the president's surrogates have been out there in full. And I've been playing you audio all night from various folks. But I want to hear from you. Jake is in Oregon, line 3 on Red Eye Radio. Jake, thanks for calling in. Go ahead.
Hey, way to live in Nashville. I've been there a few times.
It's awesome.
Jealous.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
you know what? There's plenty of room as long as you come with your conservative values.
Oh, yeah, more than that, definitely. Hey, listen, question asked on whether he's going to continue with the campaign or resign or et cetera. It's got to be a package deal. If he can't run, won't run, he also needs to step aside from the presidency. If he can't run a campaign to be president continuing on, then he can't be president as well. And I'm going to say something I know it's going to freak everybody out, but maybe Kamala is a better choice, especially after hearing what you're talking about, the bunker system they have in the White House for the president right now. I mean, how much worse is he than Kamala? We might need to measure that off right now. It's a terrible situation we've got right now with nobody really acting or is the president except for the folks pulling the strings behind us.
Hey, Jake, let me ask you, who would you rather Donald Trump run against? Wes Moore, you've got, of course, Gavin Newsom. To me, those are the big two. I mean, you've got Kamala Harris out there as well, although I don't think anybody on the left really has any intention of allowing her to run, Kamala Harris to run. They'd rather just stick it out with Joe. But who would you rather Donald Trump run against? Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Wes Moore, or Gavin Newsom. Those are the four.
Well, yeah, I'd rather have him run with the better the devil you know than the one you don't.
Yep.
And I'd rather have him run against the current president. The only problem is we've got so much time, and my concern is with the entire world seeing the way the president really is, and even though you, along with so many of us outside of this, have known this a long time, I'd rather have him run against the current president. But I'm concerned about the fact that we don't have one right now, and how are we going to limp along until the election? I'm really glad in that debate, if I remember correctly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, where President Trump said to the world, "Don't mess with America, because I'm going to be in there quick, and we can hold out." That's kind of my interpretation of his comment that he made last Thursday night. I think you heard that. Did I hear that right?
I remember hearing something like that. I don't remember exactly, but you're right. The spirit was there. And I do think there's a number of different things going on. Number one, and I mentioned this earlier in the show, you've got Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, you've got Kim Jong-un, and you've got all of these folks that are looking at America, and they do realize that we don't have a president right now. And part of that dynamic, Jake, I think what the Democrats are going to find is that the longer that they deny what we all see, the less trust we're going to have in the Democrat Party. And I think that's why you do have some of these folks that are going after Biden now, and then you've got the New York Times, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and many pundits out there who are saying that the president does need to step aside. And I think the longer that this goes on, the less trust that we're going to have in the Democrat Party moving forward, especially among independents, because clearly they're putting party power over the good of the country. And the American people saw that on full display on Thursday night, and I appreciate the call. 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number. Let's say hello to David in North Carolina on Red Eye Radio. Hey, David.
Hello, good morning. You do a great job.
Thank you.
I think there's a lot of it's obvious to me that President Biden will decide he's not going to run again. Even Jill knows that, and Jill will talk him into being content with his millions and his legacy. But he's got to stay in the office because they can't afford to have Kamala as a president for any period of time.
Right.
So I think Biden will step aside. He'll be content with his legacy and his millions. Jill will talk him into it. That's not a problem. But there's a big thing that Gary and Eric talk about a lot, and I think it's going to be huge, and that is the speeding train that's left the station, meaning the budget crunch that's coming, and there are going to have to be major cutbacks in social programs. And like they've often said, who would want the job as president during the next 4 years? And that's going to be a major, major issue. It'll be the biggest thing in the news, except for perhaps war in the Middle East when Iran attacks Israel. And I hope the Democrats don't use war as an excuse to stay in power, because that's kind of an adage that the party in the White House during war remains in the White House. And you could be right about Michelle, but I don't think she wants a job for the reasons I just stated.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see
in about 3 years.
All right, David, I appreciate the call. So a number of things. Number one, you're right. Here's the deal. If Donald Trump is in office, I'm not so sure that Iran is going to attack Israel. That's number one. Number two, Iran wouldn't have the ability to attack Israel if not for Joe Biden waiving sanctions, and that's been talked about many times. It's not the focus of my program tonight. But as far as the budget crunch and Social Security and all those kinds of things that are going to need to be cut, the budget battles, you are right. I mean, let's face it, Joe Biden, in fact, the New York Post actually, let me see if I can find it real quick. I don't think I have time to do it right now, but the New York Post actually has an article on just that. So maybe in the next segment or before the hour is over, I'll talk about Bidenomics and Biden's economy. But you're right. That is going to be a big problem for the next president is there is this is just a mess that needs to be cleaned up. But I trust Donald Trump to be able to do it. I trust Donald Trump to be able to look at this mess and figure out a way. And it's possible that the Democrats, they maybe do want to allow Joe Biden to just stay in office. Ultimately, let's allow Donald Trump to win the election, and then he'll try and fail to fix the mess that Joe Biden has created. And then what that'll do is set up Biden for, or the Democrats, it'll set up the Democrats for, either Wes Moore, Gavin Newsom, whoever, to run against the Republicans in 2028. Because there has been a complete and utter mess, a disaster that has been left for the next president, whoever that is, whether it is Joe Biden. I don't think it will be, but Joe Biden, Donald Trump, or whoever. You've got the illegal immigration problem. You've got the Middle East literally on fire, World War III. We've got all of these domestic problems at home as well. And it's going to take somebody who is an incredibly bold and strategic politician to be able to fix the mess that the Democrats have created. My money, my bet, is on a Donald Trump. 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. We'll return next on Red Eye Radio.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by House Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
And this weekend, lots of grills will be fired up, and unfortunately, a lot of people are going to be getting sick because of some grilling mistakes. Agriculture Department food safety expert Meredith Carruthers is with us to give us the two biggest mistakes outdoor grillers make. Top of the list,
not fully cooking the foods on the grill.
That happens a lot because, for one thing,
grilling really makes it look done a lot of times way before it actually is fully done.
And so she says we're asking for trouble if we don't use a food thermometer to get meat and poultry up to a high enough temperature in the center to kill any bacteria in there. Next biggest mistake,
using the same utensil that you use to put all the raw stuff on the grill to take the cooked stuff off.
Or using the same platter on which you took the raw meat and poultry out to the grill to bring the cooked stuff back to be eaten, putting any bacteria from the raw food right back onto the cooked food, right?
Yep.
Yep, and next time, more grilling goofs. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE. You folks remember when Donald Trump was in office, and I know that we all remember that because they were far better times. But, I remember back, and I wonder if you folks remember this too, where you had all of these psychiatrists and psychologists. You remember this? And they all wrote their open letters and they signed all of these different publications, and they were talking about how Donald Trump had a mental illness. He was a narcissist in chief, and, all of these other really nasty things that these psychiatrists and psychologists said about Donald Trump when he was in office, because they couldn't stand Donald Trump because a lot of these folks are left-leaning. So they'd put out these papers and sign these open letters and so forth. Where are those people now? Now that Joe Biden suffered mightily and the American people have suffered mightily through that debate, what are their comments on Joe Biden's state of mind? Because they had a lot to say about Donald Trump. Apparently, there is nothing but silence when it comes to Joe Biden. Got a lot more? Straight ahead. Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
Appreciate you listening. The phone number, as always, is 866-90 Red Eye. In for Gary and Eric, I'm Dan for another week. They return a week from this morning, as a matter of fact. This is an interesting headline, and I will be honest with you and tell you that I have not read this yet. It just came down. This is a headline from the Daily Mail, which is one of my favorites, by the way. Political historian who has correctly predicted every presidential election outcome in the past 40 years reveals if Democrats should drop Joe Biden after debate disaster against Donald Trump. Historian and prognosticator Dr. Alan Lichtman has offered his advice. Now, they set the scene. They talk about the debate. They talk about the fact that he is currently at Camp David. The Biden family has offered the president its support, saying that he needs to stick it out. He needs to continue in the race. So they talk about what this Dr. Alan Lichtman has to say. Dr. Lichtman, who previously said Trump's 34 felony counts and convictions are likely not to impact the 2024 election, which turned out to be true, is also against liberals getting rid of the 81-year-old president. He says that would be a huge mistake. He was on CNN. He says they're not doctors. They don't know whether Biden is physically capable of carrying out a second term or not. The historian relies on a formula he developed with mathematician Vladimir Kelis-Borok by analyzing elections dating back to 1860. He has used it to correctly predict the outcome of 9 presidential elections since 1984. Dr. Lichtman says that the so-called experts and pundits were saying the same thing about Ronald Reagan, who ran for a second term at the age of 73. You know, far be it from me to tell Dr. Lichtman how to analyze stuff, but go look at that second debate. Go look at Ronald Reagan and his speeches from his first 4 years in office, and you tell me if that was nearly as bad as how Ronald Reagan did when he was at the beginning of his second term or the end of his first term. There is no comparison between Joe Biden and Ronald Reagan. There just is not. Not what we saw in that debate. Anyway, he says all of this is foolhardy nonsense, Dr. Lichtman says. Interesting. He says the same pundits who led us down the primrose path of 2016 are giving the Democrats horrible advice. He says that debate performances can be overcome in referring to Biden's awful showing on Thursday and continue to criticize Democrats for abandoning their president. Well, that's interesting. At the first sign of adversity, the spineless Democrats want to throw under the bus their own incumbent president. My goodness, he says. I don't know, man. I think he's a little off on this one. I do. Because it's not just, like Biden, I don't know, made a mistake in something that he said. I mean, there is a pattern of behavior that has been going on for the last couple of years. And so you look at not only the pattern of behavior, but also that debate performance. This is not the first sign of adversity. I would respectfully say to a guy far smarter than me, this Alan Lichtman. I just think he's wrong on this one. Although, and I don't know, I'm trying to figure out what he said about Trump Biden before all of this. But he's calling out the New York Times and Democrats and, others on that side of the aisle who say that Joe Biden should go. He says, no, that does not need to happen. Whatever. And again, I would rather see Donald Trump run against Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. Would rather see that than Trump run against Wes Moore or Gavin Newsom. I want Joe Biden to stay right where he is until Election Day. That's what I want to see. we'll have to see what happens. If you're just joining us, if you're just tuning in for your morning show, you have a couple of things in the news. Number one is you've got Bill O'Reilly and a few other sources that are saying that Joe Biden will drop out of the race. Others are saying that that is not going to happen and that Joe Biden is telling President Biden to stay in the race. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but a lot of people on hold. Mark is in Knoxville, Tennessee on Red Eye Radio. Mark, thanks for calling in. Go ahead. By the way, the phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you much. I have a theory that the reason Jill is so virtually supportive of her husband staying in office because she doesn't want to give up being president.
Oh, yeah, she is. I said this earlier. Jill Biden is absolutely drunk with power, and she doesn't want to leave the White House. She doesn't want to leave her perch of power, and she loves, I believe, she loves being the center of attention. And so for Jill Biden, she has as much to lose on this one as Joe Biden does. But I don't think Joe knows where he is or what time it is or what day it is.
Exactly. There's a recent story, I think yesterday, that said he's really only functional from about 10 a.m. to 4 in the afternoon. Well, okay, who's running the show all those other hours? You know, it's not – the big decisions probably go through Barack, but she's in charge of things, and so naturally she wants to stay there. It's a sad state of affairs. I also am convinced, though, that if he sticks it out through the election, he will win it, because I think the Democrats have figured out how to firmly ensure that they get elected in presidential elections. I think they were shocked in Trump's first victory, and they doubled down to be sure that wasn't going to happen again, and then it didn't in his second election. To me, there's no way Joe Biden won that election. Between his campaign and rallies and Trump's, it just was beyond belief, and possible that Trump would overwhelm it again this time. But I think the Democrats are convinced whoever is running for president, they can make sure they win these days.
There might be, I think, Mark, I appreciate the call. I think there's going to be a different dynamic. Sure. I think there's going to be a different dynamic out there with Biden, Trump, if Biden does stay in office, because, and the show has gone by really fast, but there's a lot of polling out there this morning that shows that, and I know that polling doesn't mean diddly or squat, but there's a lot of polling out there that shows that after that debate, there's a couple of different polls, actually. There's an Ipsos poll and there's this one. CBS News YouGov poll. Biden, does he have the mental and cognitive health to serve as president? They asked registered voters back on June 9th, 35% said that Biden did have the mental and cognitive health to serve as president. That number now, down 8%, 27%. The number of people that says that Joe Biden does not have the mental and cognitive health to serve as president, that has gone up 65 to 72%. So the number of people that feel like Biden does not have the cognitive ability has gone up as well. I mean, a lot of this is very consistent. And bottom line is 72% of registered voters believe that he does not have the mental fitness to serve. 72%. So while I do totally get what Mark in Knoxville, Tennessee is saying, where he's very cynical, and I'm right there with you about being cynical about what's going on, because the problem that we have is that we were expecting a red wave in 2022. That never happened. Of course, we all know what happened in the election of 2020. And by the way, just so you know, my official talk show host opinion on this is that the election of 2020, it was stolen in the sense that the media completely manipulated that election, as did the 51 intelligence officials, past and present, both parties, who said the laptop from hell was Russian disinformation when it wasn't. And so that election in 2020 was stolen by the mainstream media. It was manipulated by the social media folks, and it was also manipulated by the intelligence agencies. I mean, that's what happened. And what we saw on Thursday night was Joe Biden clearly not having a clue as to what he was saying or where he was. And so this CBS polling, I mean, the more you read it, the more you just realize that the American people saw what they saw, regardless of what Nancy Pelosi says. I mean, Pelosi is out there, and this is what gets so frustrating, is that you do have the folks like Nancy Pelosi who just believe that the American people are dumb.
My people are very much Biden, Kamala Harris, and this is an opportunity for Joe Biden to go out there and show he has the stamina and the rest. And by the way, while the press, and for some reason they don't, there are healthcare professionals who think that Trump has dementia, that his connection, his thoughts do not go together.
What an idiot. I'm sorry. And I know that there's people that get upset and they say, oh, you should respect our political leaders. I have no respect for our political leaders. They have to earn that respect. And Nancy Pelosi has done nothing to earn my respect. She is gaslighting the American people. She is lying to the American people. And yeah, there are some folks out there who are completely partisan, completely infused with TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. And they will say, oh, yeah, Donald Trump, he's got dementia as well, completely ignoring Joe Biden. But they'll call out Donald Trump. And it is just ridiculous. And so it's interesting. I always find it fascinating, the news outlets, the media outlets that will still put, say, for example, a Nancy Pelosi on the air, whether it's television or radio, because you know what she's going to say. And there's absolutely no value to that kind of an interview, because she is a partisan, activist, hack politician who will do anything that she possibly can to protect Joe Biden and harm America, and do whatever she needs to do to further her own wealth and her own benefit. That's what Nancy Pelosi is all about. And so when you hear this kind of talk, I love what the Atlanta Journal-Constitution said. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution literally said that anyone who talks about Joe Biden and says that he was overprepared or whatever, they are lying to the American people, and they are insulting the intelligence of the American people. That's what the Atlanta Journal-Constitution says. Before the debate, 27% of likely voters rated Biden as good or excellent when it came to his mental fitness to be president, Ipsos said. Following the debate, that level declined to 20%. The decline was steepest among Democratic respondents, going from 56% before the debate to 42% after the debate. Is anybody else alarmed that 42% of Democrats believe that Biden is of sound mental health? And by the way, listening to Nancy Pelosi and watching Nancy Pelosi during a debate, or I should say during a interview on television, I've got some questions about her as well. Because oftentimes she sounds as batty as Biden. One worrying sign for the president was that black voters, a group that Joe Biden needs to win as they overwhelmingly supported him in 2020, dropped 15% in their confidence of his mental fitness. One of the big storylines that's out there is black Democrats are screaming about something that Donald Trump said when the president, I don't have the audio because I believe that it's a silly part of the story, but I'll mention it as the show comes to a close. Well, I'll tell you after the break. It is Red Eye Radio, 866-90 Red Eye. Got a lot more straight ahead.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90 Red Eye, Donald Trump.
Is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking black jobs now.
All right, so you got a bunch of people on the left who are trying to make hay about the fact that Donald Trump said they're taking, and I'm air quoting here, black jobs. And if that's where they want to hang their hat, then that's what they're going to do. But there is no mistaking that black jobs and white jobs and Hispanic jobs have been taken by people coming across the southern border. That, my friends, is simply a fact. And if they want to keep their head buried in the sand, go ahead. It's Red Eye Radio.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.